We are live on the Page Builder Summit 7.0. This is going to be a really interesting panel. You can see that I'm joined by three fabulous people. We'll get the introductions going there. But before we do that, I just want to make a plea. If you are watching this live, the whole premise of this conversation really is that it's a dialogue, not just between the three people with me on the screen, but also between you, the audience members. And the way that you're going to get your questions to these fine people is by dropping it in the chat widget by the side of the video. So you don't need to watch anything prior to this. There's nothing to see. It's just any security related question to do with WordPress in general, WordPress page builders, anything like that. Just drop it in the chat right away. And then we can start queuing them up and these fine people can take a hold of those and hopefully give us an engaging, interesting, educational experience for the next half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever it may be. So you can see I'm joined by Maciek, I'm joined by Calvin, and I'm joined by Nestor. Just very, very quickly, we'll just do a quick round robin. Do you just want to introduce yourself and we'll keep it really short if that's okay? So we'll go Maciek first.
Okay, so I work at Patchstack as a security community manager, which is a very nice title, but I have a pleasure to constantly be in contact with the whole security community around Patchstack. So that's my thing. And like right now, I'm kind of leading all the panels and things.
Nice. Thank you, Maciek. Appreciate it. That's great. And we'll go to Calvin. How are you doing, Calvin?
Hi, Gal. I'm Calvin. I'm a security researcher / developer and the founder of Snicco, where we help hosting companies offer application security to their user base. And yeah, we're deep into the security space, a lot of vulnerability research, and yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Calvin. And finally for today, Nestor's joining us as well. Give us your intro, Nestor.
Hi, I'm working at Patchstack at this moment as a data and research engineering manager. So working with all the vulnerabilities data sets. But previously I was working as a security analyst at Scurry, GoDaddy, and some other companies. So this is like a shift in my position. But even though I working with the security in the last eight years, something like that.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so I'm going to make that plea once more. If you are watching this live, don't be shy. Put your question in there. You know, any question is a good question. We realize that for some of you, you may well be expert, and we've got experts. That's fine. But if you ask a question that you feel maybe, I don't know, you think that it's too simple, it's not too simple. Pop it into the chat. We'll get it in front of these fine people. And let's get the conversation going. I think they're going to talk amongst themselves for a bit. They've got a few things they want to talk about. And then if the questions come in, we will begin to deal with those. If the questions don't come in, then it's going to be a conversation between these three people, and it'll probably be interesting anyway. But let's make sure that doesn't happen. Let's get them some questions. So Maciek, I'm going to hand the panel over to you, and we will see you in a little while.
Thanks, Nathan. Yeah, so the reason why we wanted to have this panel and talk about security is because, you know, when there are people that are saying, remember, security or SEO or performance is the most important part when you are building a web. Everyone is telling that about their field. The only difference is that if you handle SEO poorly, the worst thing that will happen, you will disappear for a moment from Google, but you can restore it. If your the website's accessibility is poor, you can still fix it. You will lose just a part of your traffic. That's not something good, but still you can recover. With security, it's a bit more difficult because if you handle security poorly and your website will get hacked, not only you can lose reputation, you can lose money from many things, because your store will stop working because of legal reasons. I mean, if you leak your data somewhere, GDPR has a lot of fines because of this reason. So security is one of those few things that sometimes can create really unrecoverable damage. And that is kind of a reason why we are here. Because when you are starting building your website, you are thinking about features, about what to add, how to make it work nicely, look nicely. And security is somewhere in the background. You don't care about it so much. And it can be a big problem. And this is kind of, I'm making this intro to kind of start with the first and the general question, but I think it's very important, guys. So do you think that page builders, and we are gathered here because we all like page builders here, are they secure, like in general? So who's first? Who wants to answer this question?
I can go. It is.
Go ahead.
I tend to think about it this way. Every single piece of software can have vulnerabilities, and you kind of try to reduce the surface of vulnerabilities that a specific piece of software exposes. And page builders are generally very complex pieces of software and a lot of functionality, a lot of moving pieces. And therefore it's easier to get something wrong, right? Like the developers of page builders are also just humans. They make mistakes. And due to the complexity of a page builder, I think it's easier to make mistakes. It's not necessarily that page builders are insecure or secure. It's just large piece of software has a great surface for making mistakes, basically. That's how I think about it. And you want to kind of make sure how to reduce that surface, basically, for you.
And
Yes,
Nestor, and what about you? Yeah.
totally agree with Calvin. At the end, it's I would like to remark that we are human and human being fails. That's a fact. So every piece of code that is made by humans never will be 100% secure. So one of the things you always say in this field of security is that there is no 100% effective security we can install in our website. Even if we can assure that there is any page builder out there that is 100% secure. The thing is, to understand that behind the page builder there are some groups, some teams of developers, and we have to trust that they are doing their job properly. So from a point of view, trying to explain in one sentence if a page builder is secure or not, I always will tell to explain this, if the security about using like a layer example, right? If you just have the WordPress and you put some layers on the top, you can find yourself that there's some of the layers have some conflicts between them, but also there are some holes where the attacks can happen and can pass through all the layers and get into the data and information within the website. So keep in mind that for me the main takeaway from this part is, okay, so are page builders secure, or are the teams behind the page builders trustworthy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in general, we can right now say that if we could sum up this part, yeah, it depends, right? It depends on so many things, and this is something very, very also very important to understand, that when it comes to security, very often there are no simple answers. This depends part will show up very often because there are so many layers, there are so many moving parts, and especially that, let's remember that WordPress is built on plugins, so numbers of variation that can happen, it almost just it's like astronomical amounts of combinations. So every time something can go wrong, and we kind of have to remember about it. Okay, but when we are talking about page builders, one of the very important things is let's kind of call it trust towards one thing, towards the software. We trust the team that they did the software in the right way. And on the other hand, we also have the trust thing when it comes to our users, our employees. that we are giving them access. So how would you say about this? Should we like trust those plugins like in general, or should we look at something more deeply before looking? I think that Calvin will answer this because I know that he likes this.
Okay, let me talk about the human access part, and then Nestor can maybe handle the software trust part. You have to think about it this way. Every user on your site that has access to the page builder by nature must have a lot higher security hygiene and security controls than, for example, somebody that can only log in and write a post. Why is that? Because, like I said, page builders have a very big surface, and it's quite common that page builders have kind of attack vectors where you can not necessarily have to be an admin, but for example, a contributor or an author, maybe you can access some parts of the page builder functionality, but because page builders have such a big surface, it sometimes happens that vulnerabilities creep in where you can exploit these low privileged accounts to basically escalate your privilege on the site. So I'd say that anybody that has access to a page builder, you should kind of think about them as an administrator, in my opinion. Either make it explicit and only give administrators access to the page builder, or make sure that basically the same security controls and security features that you implement for your administrators are also implemented for everybody that has access to a page builder. And regardless of whether you gave them some sort of edit-only access, where I know sometimes agencies like to give their clients access to the page builder, where they can not make modifications to the page structure, but they can maybe change the heading or these kinds of things. I recommend you only do that if you are sure that these user accounts have the same security hygiene and security controls as administrators from the site.
And could you just quickly explain what do you mean by this beautiful term, security hygiene?
Oh, this is like a very broad term, but to give an example, have secure passwords, for example. I can, like, one of the quickest wins I can recommend for anybody that doesn't involve plugins or anything is use a password manager, like something like 1Password. It's very, like, it's probably like the best value for money in security is using a password manager, in my opinion, because a lot of WordPress sites are hacked either to weak passwords or to stolen passwords, and the password manager really makes it very, very difficult for each of these to succeed. For example, one of your policies could be that everybody that can use the page builder must also be using a password manager. And if you give, and how do you enforce it basically with clients? Well, you can't really. So if you give them access, then you need to have these kinds of conversations with them, and either don't give them access if they don't want to use something like that, or maybe as part of your agency setup or onboarding or whatever, you can just onboard them to 1Password and have an additional service to offer, and also make it more secure for the clients. Just an example, but security hygiene is like a broader topic. But for example, having secure passwords is one of them.
Okay.
So can I contribute to that part?
Oh yes, of course.
Oh yeah. One of the things also is important in the human part of the users is to apply the least privilege principle. So which is it's very easy and very easy to understand, but it's very difficult to maintain. The idea here is to give only the permissions you really need every time you get access to the website. So rather than giving admins permissions to an editor, give editor permissions and this kind of thing. The problem is that maybe you in the very beginning you are taking care of this and giving the permission that really need, your users need. But the problem is that when it confronts the time pass, you normally change those permissions, but you have to control every time which of them has grid of permissions out there. So it's something pretty important. So it remarks one of the points in security is not once in lifetime thing to apply. It's also something that you have to keep in mind continuously, right? For example, this privilege thing, also the checking that the passwords are strong, as Calvin mentioned, and so on. Going to the part of the trust chain of the software, the main thing that you have to have in mind as every piece of software in WordPress ecosystem is based in the Bazaar model. The Bazaar model, you have like a little core, and then you just allow to pull some pieces in the top of it to make it more powerful. So in this situation, in the open source situation like it is WordPress, you can find yourself that the WordPress core is the lowest layer. Then you have in top some plugins, and then on top you have the page builders and all the add-ons you can install for the page builders. And on top of that, each of those layers, or each of those pieces, has a developer team behind it. So the development team is based on humans, and they can be pushed because of they have some goals. They can just because it happens to developers, they just put something like, okay, let's put this in at this point we are in staging, and let's change it after that, and then forget about it. You find yourself that you introduced a bug uh, unconsciously into the code that is in production. This kind of things happens all the time. So
I
the more layers, the more pieces you put in the top, the more teams you are trusting in, right? So you get like a very long chain of trust. Yeah, go ahead, Calvin.
I like that. Like a lot of security is about risk management or assessing if adding something is worth the risk that comes with it. For like Mr. mentioned, every time you install a plugin, you add more surface level to your website security. And sometimes the risk is not worth the value that you get from a plugin. Like if it's not absolutely essential to your functionality, I like to think of it this way. If it doesn't really make you money or help you operate your business or your client's business in that case, I maybe would think twice about installing a specific add-on or a specific plugin. If it's just a nice to have, maybe consider if it's worth taking on that long-term risk. Like Nestor mentioned, for example, do you really know all the companies that are involved in the development of all the add-ons? Do you know what kind of security hygiene they have, for example? Do you know if the developer of some add-on that may be very low usage, does the developer use two-factor authentication for their account where they develop their software in GitHub, for example, or where they distribute the updates to you? Like it is a risk, and I think really hard about it if you really need a specific plugin. Like the rule is, in my opinion, should be like, does it help us make more money, or is it essential to operating the business? And many add-ons and these types of things are not, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And also one of the things that is important here, sorry, is that how we can trust, or how we can defer which of teams are trustful, we can trust on them, and which of them we can't, or we should try to find alternatives for that plugin. So, right, because it's pretty. I know it's not easy to say, okay, so I don't know if this plugin will make the difference in my business or in my site, right? I know this is difficult. So how I can get information about the team that is behind, right? So one of the things, the classic things, is the feedbacks, right? So the reviews that the plugin has in socials, or in even in the, for example, in the repository, on this kind of thing. So looking at there, and looking, for example, at the updates periods they have in the GitHub or in the WordPress repository, are two important points to take a look at, right? Because if it's something that is maintains often, gets often updates, but also there is a lot of reviews there, and you can see, if you go to the worst reviews, which is something I recommend to you, go to always to the worst review and check why those worst reviews happen, so you can take an idea of how the teams are behind. So as a security company, we have seen a lot of companies out there that they want to sell, they want to ship it fast without any kind of QA or any kind of quality of the code. So that's what Calvi and me are talking about the teams behind the plugin.
I think, and also one of the best ways to judge if a specific organization or developer has like a healthy security procedures in place is how they behave when there's a vulnerability disclosed in their plugin, right? Anything like hiding the vulnerability, not mentioning it clearly in the changelog, not clearly communicating it, any sort of these things is like kind of a red flag that suggests that like general, like even the bare minimum security practices for a software development company are not in place. And this is like a really good thing to look for. So if somebody has a vulnerability, if a vendor or a specific plugin has a vulnerability and they don't clearly communicate that, or they don't clearly tell you what you should do or what you shouldn't do, or how can you assess if you were affected, all of these things, then it's like kind of an indicator, a little red flag that they are not the most mature company regarding security.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I think it's time to kind of jump to the Q&A part, because I see that there is a lot of questions piling up and some of them are really great. So let's start with a question from Nathan. Do you have any actionable tips that I can take away from this presentation? Some quick win. So guys, to make it short, give
one and one maybe.
One quick tip.
I already mentioned it, but I think get a password manager. I can recommend one password personally. I'm not affiliate or anything. That's what we use. Get something like one password for you, and maybe if you have team members, for your entire team. And if possible, also try to onboard your clients on a password manager. Everybody that is using the WordPress site as an not a customer, like a WooCommerce subscriber or whatever, any like staff basically should be using a password manager. That is one of the quickest and easiest wins that you can do for your security overall, and it doesn't really cost that much money per user. It's like very the value compared to the money that you pay is really, really high. That's what I would recommend.
Esther, and you?
Can I recommend to install a security plugin? I mean, at the end, there are so many different aspects that you have to keep in mind when you are talking about security, that some of the security plugins can work on that. What I don't really recommend, for example, it's a quick win, but it's in the opposite part. Is not doing something, is just avoiding doing something, is to not install a lot of themes and a lot of plugins. Only those that are strictly required. So one of the things, it's totally linked with the previous trust about trust block, which is to not install more or any of the any plugin or theme that is not strictly required for the functionality of your website. That's something super important. And linked with this, update all the time your website. Keep it updated all the time. So every time you see like the number on the top with updates, just go ahead and update it. You will probably complain about, if I do that and it's not compatible with my website, we can get it down. So there is a sentence I tend to say always, that any cost of a hack web is always higher than any cost of a web down. So I prefer that your web goes down than your web got hacked.
Basically cut down on anything that is non-essential to the functionality or making you money.
Absolutely. The same. Those are
okay.
enough, or you need more?
No, this one is enough. Okay, so another question that we have, and I think it's also quite interesting because we started discussing this. How would you know if a company has a vulnerability that they are not communicating?
I'll leave that to you, Nestor.
the thing is that it has to be discovered, right? If there is a vulnerability and they are not talking about that, but there is a security company out there that discover it, and maybe there are some bad hackers out there, attackers that are trying to leverage it using exploit. So how you can know if there is a vulnerability? The only thing from my point of view is just trying to have a service of a security company that has a vulnerability research team behind that can discover or can disclose or this kind of vulnerabilities, even if the vendor doesn't want to disclose this information. But normally this doesn't happen in this way. Normally there is like a negotiation with the vendor when the researcher finds a vulnerability, and then normally the communication is good enough for agree at disclosure time and so. But having other company that has this kind of security research behind is something that will help a lot to get this information, rather even if the vendors doesn't want to, but even more if they have a WAF, a website application that applies rules, yeah, even before the vulnerabilities patch. Go ahead, Calvin.
So to give an example, there are in the WordPress space, there are the three main services for that are Patchstack and WordFence and the WP Scan. Each of these have sort of like a database where you can get notified about new vulnerabilities that have been discovered in the WordPress ecosystem. And for example, let's say you're using plugin A, right? And any of these services discloses a vulnerability in plugin A, then it's very easy for you to check, for example, your email account or their social media groups or their Twitter or whatever, if they have clearly communicated that to you. For example, if a vendor has a vulnerability, they should notify all the users, and soon that will be like mandated by law as well. They should send you an email, what happened, like how can you verify if you're affected, what kind of steps do you need to take possibly. And if any of these don't take place, then that is kind of like a warning signal. But you as a site owner will probably not be able to find vulnerabilities that you don't know about. So you can only compare, okay, these kind of vulnerabilities existed. Did I receive any clear communications or from the vendor after the fact, not before the fact, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I must say that kind of recently I remember how WP Engine handled some changes in advanced custom fields and how they communicated through emails. It was there was a lot of communication. It was very clear. It was actionable. So it was kind of an example how you should treat. And if you will see that in the changelog, you see a lot of, I don't know, minor changes, fixes. This is a huge red flag because very often security changes are kind of hidden under those.
And the classical one being like the fix improve security, right?
Exactly.
That is a red flag.
Or even fix improve stability, which is kind of which is even worse because you don't know that anything happened, and that's horrible.
Yeah, in terms of security, there should be something like death. Not that death letter is another name. I don't know, remember, but there is like a process you should follow after you get a security and a security issue, even if there is leak information or even it's only a bug. So you should explain what happened. But it's not mandatory by law, only if there is a leak information, if there is a risk, a big risk of leak information. Right?
Maybe to conclude this topic, one more thing that is actually a positive is if there's security vulnerability and they release an update just to address that vulnerability and it's clearly marked as a security update and not mixed in with functionality, or oftentimes what vendors do is they kind of queue up vulnerabilities and mix them in with a big functionality update. And what then happens is people can't update because compatibility reasons and whatever, and then they don't get the security fixes. So one sign of a mature development practice towards security is shipping basically self-contained small security patches that only address specific vulnerability that was discovered. That's like a positive sign.
Yeah. Okay, time for another question, and this is this I think is also a very good one. I think you like it from Mark. How do you think we can get more average WordPress users to value security best practice?
In my opinion, it's difficult in the same way that it's very difficult to educate the general consumer population about security practices. In my opinion, it needs to improve. WordPress in general needs to improve here the ecosystem. In my opinion, the barrier to entry has gotten little bit too low, where you start out and don't worry about any of these things. In my opinion, it's fine if you're starting or you're learning or you're building your own kind of things. But I think at the point when you start offering services to other people, or maybe manage their sites or manage their hosting, this way you should have like a really solid understanding. You don't need to be like a security expert, but you should have a solid understanding of the fundamentals, because security is like one part of having an online presence that you can't just ignore, even if many people like want to. How to get there, it's a very difficult question, but I think kind of like events like these, and general education, and over time maybe it'll improve.
Yeah, I would say it's difficult as well, but I would say that one of the things, one of the examples I tend to use normally is that you don't go out from your house and you don't lock it, right? So it's the same in your website. If you build something online, you have a responsibility there. So the only way of taking care of that responsibility really is just to know, to educate, get education about security. So there's some basics, as Calvin covered before, but one of the things we always tend to discuss into the security field is how we can educate people, or to make the people more aware about security without touching the wallet, right? One of the things that normally make this kind of situation more actionable is when the people really realize that they can be hacked, and they can have to find themselves paying a big fine, or having a very a very big problem with their reputation. So, for example, in CEO, in SEO, sorry, in SEO situations, back in time, I always remembered some people that comes into the mediation department, asking why they appear with the red page, right, from the Google, or this little tag that is behind of all the rest of something like this site might be hacked. So the problem with that is that before getting in that point that the search engine has ranked you as a hacked site, before that there is a lot of time that you have been hacked and you didn't realize that.
Yeah, ideally, the point when you start to worry about security is not when your client calls you angry about their site displaying the infamous red screen of the site has been observed for malicious activity. Ideally, that is not when you start to worry about these things and get to work.
Absolutely, that was my point. I mean, it's you have to take care from the very beginning. In security field, we always say that we should apply some kind of security by design, right? So every time you do something, you have to think on secure it from malicious attacks.
It is a bit like insurance in some sense, and you shouldn't worry about what's the English term, like the if you get into an accident, and then that's not the point where you should worry about like health insurance, right? That's too late, right?
Exactly.
And security is the same way.
Yeah, I mean there is this saying about backups, and I feel that it will also fit this one. That there are two types of people: those who don't care about security, and those who will. Okay, and here I have another one, and this is one of those general ones, but I think that you also enjoyed. The age-old question: WordPress is not secure. Can we confidently tell clients this is a myth?
So I'd say this for most kinds of use cases, WordPress is secure, like starts out secure. There's a little nuance to it for some enterprise use cases, high traffic shops and enterprise use cases. There are some things you need to add to the default of WordPress to appropriate it to that use case. But for most people that will not apply in WordPress, the default is perfectly secure. The issue though is the ecosystem, or basically let's say the WordPress way, makes it easy for people to shoot themselves in the foot. That's how I would put it, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I would say that WordPress is secure out of the box, right? I mean, out of the box, as it is in the moment you really install it, it's secure. The problem is that it's super easy to make it insecure because there is not, as Calvin mentioned, WordPress way, there is not any kind of enforcement of security in the plugins or in the themes or in the way you configure your website. There is not any kind of education internally. I mean, this kind of wizards trying to explain how to do the things in the secure way. So it's something like, this is party, so just go ahead from here. From here, I know this is secure. So from here, you go ahead and it's your responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of worth to mention that as I remember from the last year report we published at Patchstack, you can kind of find it the white paper for the last year. 96 or 8% vulnerabilities in the whole ecosystem came from plugins, and there were only 13, not 13%, 13 vulnerabilities in core, and they weren't severe at all. So this kind of shows.
It also goes, if we say if it's WordPress secure, it also goes a bit beyond like the software itself. It also like the, let's say, standard operating procedures at the end of the WordPress way. For example, if you have an issue with a plugin, right? You shouldn't just give the plugin support full access to your site. That is like oftentimes even illegal depending on the data that you store in your site. This is a big security risk because for many companies, you have, for example, a third-party support that it's outsourced to. And like, do you really know who's operating at that time? At that point, maybe it's an employee that's just there like for 1 month. It is kind of like these practices that are common in the WordPress ecosystem. Like, I have an issue with my site. Oh, well, I just give the full SFTP or admin credentials to that plugin support. That's not like really a good thing for your overall security posture. For example, in this specific scenario, your hosting service should provide you with a way to create a staging site. And ideally, you also remove any sensitive data before you give access to it, like a clean slate.
Ideally.
So it goes beyond, in my opinion, is WordPress secure? Is to the perception of WordPress not being secure, it goes beyond software and also like the standard practices or what's seen as normal in the WordPress ecosystem, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
We should split what is WordPress and what is WordPress ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's because when we are talking about the ecosystem, it's not just about the plugins and the themes, but the things that Calvin mentioned, the WordPress way of doing some things we kind of got used to, and they are not always the best one. Okay, I think we will manage to squeeze 2 questions. So, guys, please a bit shorter because we're
if you want it, let's go rapidly through the remaining ones.
So, how would you go about choosing security tools for different types of projects? For example, brochure site versus e-commerce versus intranet.
It's pretty difficult to go very, very quick.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it, because I know it's a very broad topic, but I think
it also depends on budget, and I think that's not possible to answer quickly.
I mean, one of the things I normally go for that in these situations is how much worth, how much money worth your content or your website or the site. So, relation with that, you should invest.
I think it's like think about it this way: if your site is hacked and even leave leave out of the picture all the intangible damages like reputation and whatever. Like, don't think about it for a minute. Like, just for example, if you have a business and an e-commerce site and it does like whatever X per day, right? A couple thousand of dollars or whatever. What if your store stops to operate for 1 day, right? Like, is it reasonable to have that be like your security budget for a year? Like, kind of think about it in this way. Whatever number you think of is probably in reality like a couple, like dozen times higher to all the due to all the intangible benefits. You can't really like quantify like reputational damage. But yeah, that's like a good thing to determine like your budget basically.
Okay. Okay, and this one is also very interesting, especially that there are so many myths around this question. So, are there any benefits with security by obscurity, like hiding the WP admin login screen and many others?
So I'd say no, and also I tend to, my advice would be to avoid vendors that market these as features, because they are kind of like betting on you not knowing anything and thinking that like the longest feature list is like a good thing, and I take it as a red flag if there is like some offered or proposed to be like a good security solution.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's something that it would affect your security score very little, right? Because if someone want to hack your website, they will. This could delay a little bit, but they won't prevent it.
Yeah, and especially that there are so many tips about those, and
There are
in most
many
cases,
like it's like hide the
change the
locker.
prefix. Change the
Change-
prefix. It's
Right.
like
It's like one symptom of many of these.
But also
Yeah.
there is a problem if you don't do that in the good way. You can find yourself that every time you update your website, you just break the website.
Oh, true. Yeah. Okay. So, oh my, I saw a great question, and though it's kind of okay. This is also a very good one. Is there a way that I can easily make my site secure? For example, click of a button, or do I need to be an expert?
Go ahead, Calvin.
No, there's no silver bullet for this. Like for many other things, often you looking for a silver bullet is like part of the problem. You shouldn't be looking for a silver bullet. It doesn't exist, not in security and also not in many other places. And if somebody tries to sell you a silver bullet, I take that like kind of a red flag. Like anything out of the whatever set and forget and let us do all the heavy lifting while you lay back and whatever. This is not the way to go, in my opinion. It seems tempting, but unfortunately, it doesn't work.
I would like to say two things about that. I mean, one of the things we have to assure to keep in mind always is there is not 100% of security. There is no 100% efficient security out there, right? So there is no silver bullet, as Calvin said. So I always put in this way. Just try to imagine your security as a bar of life, right? So every time you put a security measure in your website, well done. I mean, not stacking a lot of antivirus or stacking a lot of security plugins, but they're doing in the good way. You just put some new security scores in your life bar, right? So you won't reach the 100%, but you have a big one. But the problem is that you have to maintain. It's nothing that you apply one very first day you put on production your website. It's something that you have to keep in mind. So it's a good idea to have managed service out there. Like for example, if you have a hosting with a managed service, so you can forget about some of the things related with the security and just focus on publishing job. But also it depends of your user case. I mean, not the same if you have a portfolio website or you have e-commerce, have a editorial magazine site. it depends. But as we mentioned before, the amount of money your website worth will make you an idea of how much you should invest in security. And sometimes it's having an expert behind keeping care of your website, your security, your website
Okay.
security. Sorry.
Yeah. And okay, how much time do we have left? Okay, so
Maybe one
one
question.
last question, I think. So I understand that security is important, but how do I explain it to my clients? They don't understand why they should pay extra for this. So what are the I mean, we discussed some things of it, but what can hurt them the most so they will kind of decide, yeah, let's kind of invest in security?
Get hacked. Whenever you get hacked, you just realize that you have to invest in security for sure.
That is true.
Also,
That is true.
depending on the market or segment that your client is in, there might be potential legal issues, compliance issues, depending on what you do. If you're in Europe, like the GDPR, like disclosure of user details and whatever, that usually comes with fines nowadays. And in general, if your client doesn't understand any of that, try to make like the analogy with the insurance. Like that's usually like relatable to clients because they pay for business insurance or whatever, and just have them see it in the same way.
Yeah, keep in mind, just touching the wallet is one of the best strategies for making the people to make aware that they have to invest in security. So I don't know. GDPR is right now one of the most cheer creation to the customers that are creating websites. So one of the things I really recommend, for example, to visit a website that is enforcement tracker or trackman, something like that. So there you can see like a list of GDPR fines that has been happened the whole European Union. So you can see some examples of what could happen if you get hacked. So depending of as Calvin said, depending of how big your company or your website or your client is, website is, it will depend also the fine you will receive if you get hacked. So maybe the fear is right now the best strategy, make people aware about investing in security. But I would like just to finish thinking that given the typical sentence that the security is not anymore an option. So
Also,
yeah, go ahead.
maybe to sum that up, what also works sometimes is like an appeal to authority. Basically, the client pays you because he doesn't know about that topic, and if you say it is done this way on under my management, on my hosting, on my care plan, then it's either take it or leave it. It shouldn't be like an optional thing to add on top. It should be baked in, and if a client doesn't want it, then it's fine, right? In the same way, if I consult with my lawyer or whatever, and then I don't second guess my lawyer for things that I really don't know anything about, right? It's kind of the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I even see that someone in the comments mentioned, yep, the second the client gets hacked, they are all about security. So that was like a great summary. So yeah, I see that Nathan is with us. So this means that we should slowly start to wrap up everything, right? You are muted. Nathan, you are muted.
We can't hear you. Yeah, now.
Now we can hear you. Now we can hear you.
I'm not muted. Weird.
Now it's okay. Now it's okay. Now we can hear you. But for a moment we couldn't.
I don't know what I did. But thank you. I was just going into... Can you hear me now? That's the important thing.
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Okay. I was just saying thank you so much. There was a whole bunch of questions that we actually didn't get to. Never mind. That could be for another day. But thank you for anybody who put in a comment. Thank you to Maciek for sort of chairing our panel today. And thank you certainly to Calvin and Nestor. Today is sponsored by Patchstack. We have Patchstack as one of our main partner sponsors, and the day is all about them, hence the presentation. But I guess the best URL that I would recommend to go and discover all the bits and pieces about Patchstack would be, obviously, patchstack.com. It's spelt as you would imagine, patchstack.com. Go there and check out what it is that they offer. Just before we go, is there any place where anybody could contact you if we just go round the houses? Do you frequently hang out on a particular social network or anything like that? So we'll just begin with Maciek. Where could people find you if they wanted to be in touch?
In my case, the best place is Twitter. It's Palmiak Floor FP. So.
Okay.
But you can probably find me under my name. So.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Same for me on Twitter. It's like it's spelled there, Kelvin Alkan, just without the space and all in lowercase. I guess if you have any question that wasn't answered, then feel free to tweet at me there, and then I'll reply to you there if your question wasn't answered. Like just that my name is displayed there without the space, and then you'll find it.
Absolutely.
And Nessa.
The same with me. I mean, I'm more active in Twitter, sometimes in LinkedIn as well, but Twitter is the best way to find us. So if you want to get your question answered, as Calvin said, you can mention us in all of us or whoever you want to get the answer. Twitter, and my handle is Farar, Phirar. Sorry. And then normally every.
Okay. Thank you so much. And as is always the case, just as we're about to end, people pop up and say nice things. I love Patchstack, says Sam White. Klaus says thanks for the insights. And Mark, who actually did bump in a load of questions. This has been great, guys. Thank you. So I guess that's a good place to end it on a positive note. Thank you for chatting to us about WordPress and page builder security today. Really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan, for having
me.
that.
Bye.
Take it easy.
Have a great day.